Not so long ago, Barack Obama described Pakistan as the most dangerous place in the world. That was before the Pakistani army launched an offensive against Taliban militants in the Swat. Is Pakistan now? My guest today is Pakistan's ambassador in Washington, Hussein Haqqani. Has his government the means and the will to tame the armed Islamists? Ambassador Hussein Haqqani, welcome to Hard Talk.
It's a pleasure being here, Steve.
Is this major military offensive, military operation that we see from your government security forces in the Swat Valley recognition that your efforts to appease the Pakistani Taliban have failed?
First of all, let us understand where the Taliban came from. They came as a direct result of Pakistan's involvement, along with all the Western nations, in fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan through jihad. Pakistan was late in recognizing that the jihadis are going to become a menace for ourselves. And I'm glad that that recognition is widespread in Pakistan. The political leadership has been saying from day one that fighting the Taliban is our war. Now that we have consensus in Pakistan, Pakistan's military forces are acting, and I think we will continue and press on the operations.
Well, I'm surprised that you say our leadership has recognized from day one that the Taliban is the enemy, is a danger, because patently that isn't true. As recently as April 2009, your government signed a deal with the Taliban in the Swat Valley to have Sharia law imposed.
I think that a distinction has to be made between appeasement and a tactical maneuver to try and get more people on our side. The deal was never struck with the Taliban. It was struck with the Tehreek-e-Nefaz-e-Shariat-e-Mahmadi, which is a local movement in the Malakand division, which supported the aims of the Taliban without joining them militarily. The expectation was that they would either be able to persuade the Taliban to lay down their arms, or their followers will immediately see that the Taliban are irreconcilable, and that will enable us to move against them.
But I'm just wondering how you could have made, not you personally, but how your government could have made such a massive miscalculation. Because at the time that deal was announced, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said that your government was abdicating to the Taliban and the extremists, and it seems that events have proved that to be right, have they not?
And I responded to her by saying that it is not an abdication, and you will see action as and when it becomes necessary. And that is exactly what has happened. Look, Pakistan has become a democracy after several years of authoritarian rule. Gone are the days where one person in one day, whether we will be supporting the Taliban or we will be opposing them. Pakistan needs consensus, debate, discussion within the government also. President Asif Zardari very clearly said the day he was sworn in as president that fighting the Taliban and extremists is our war. Prime Minister Gilani said exactly the same thing. Now, when it came to discussions with the Taliban and their supporters in the Swat Valley, we must understand that there is a provincial government in the Pashtunkhwa province, the northwest frontier province of Pakistan, and the provincial government supported an agreement. If you remember, the president sat on the agreement for a long time until the Pakistani parliament unanimously called upon him to sign it, and he did. It failed. Now we have the situation that we have. The Pakistani government certainly has the will to fight this menace. Whether we have the means completely is the matter that we need to discuss within our country and with our friends abroad.
All right, and we're going to talk about the means, but let us just be clear about one thing then. Is this, as some people are saying, a watershed moment? There will no longer be any discussion of deals with the Islamists in their various different guises. This is it. From now on, Pakistan confronts and indeed uses force to, quote unquote, because your generals have used this word, eradicate the militant threat. Is that it?
Absolutely, but a distinction needs to be made within Islamists. There are those who want to, through political means, by engaging in the democratic process, bring Islamic law to the country. They are within their means, just as there are Christian political movements in the United States, in Europe. That is not the issue. The issue is those who engage
important.
in violence.
Sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is that you wouldn't rule out Sharia law being imposed in the Swat Valley or other parts of the Northwest Frontier Province or tribal areas. You're saying that that's a very real possibility.
Well, if the electorate ever votes for them, certainly that's a possibility. As of now, the elected parties in Pakistan support the democratic constitution and the law that we have in Pakistan. So I think that in absolute theory, if the people of Pakistan overwhelmingly vote for Islamist parties, democratic Islamist parties, we can see a future in which people will have a different kind of law. There is no chance of that as of the present moment because the major political parties in Pakistan do not support that.
One problem you have, and I'm going to wheel out the old cliche about hearts and minds, one problem you have is that in conducting this military operation, the Pakistani army has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. We know, because BBC reporters have talked to them, that many of them are furious with what has happened to them. They've lost their homes, their villages have been destroyed, they see that there's no prospect of going back anytime soon. They've demanded compensation. They haven't received any promise of compensation. And many of them say, what is the Pakistani army doing conducting an operation that in the end hurts civilians? That is not a successful hearts and minds operation.
Well, I think that when these people, of course, realized that the brutality of the Taliban also was something that they were very resentful of. After all, the Taliban stopped their daughters from going to school. They butchered anyone they disagreed with.
Yeah, but with respect, it is not the Taliban that has knocked down their houses and their villages.
Well, the Taliban are the ones to blame for all of this because, after all, the Pakistani military is not doing this as an exercise. They are doing it in response to the provocation from the Taliban. And I think that the people are getting the relief, and as that relief, rehabilitation and reconstruction effort gets underway, we will be able to win the hearts and minds of the people because in the end, the Taliban offer them no future. The Taliban may be great when it comes to giving short sound bites to BBC reporters saying, you know, we will have an Islamic revolution and do this and do that. But all they have given the people of Pakistan is misery. And I'm glad that the people of Pakistan are realizing it and we have a national consensus. The Parliament recognizes it.
The point, I suppose, about talking about the way the army has conducted its operation is that many experts, and I'm thinking now of David Kilcullen as one of them, the Australian who advised the US on counterinsurgency tactics in Iraq and has now spent a lot of time looking at what's happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan. He says your army is fundamentally ill-equipped to conduct counterinsurgency operations. You're just not very good at it because always your strategic threat has been seen to be India. You've got a huge army massed on the border with India, but you're not very good at counterinsurgency. Would you accept that?
Well, I would just say that a country's threat perception is based on its history and on how people view the past relationship with neighbors. So with India, we have had problems in the past. India's military is also massed along our borders. So it's not just us. If there is a mutual discussion, which we want, then India and Pakistan can free each other's troops from the border and have a more amicable relationship.
Well, your president said just the other day, forgive me, but your president said just the other day, sort of, that he no longer regarded India as the number one threat to Pakistan, that the insurgency, is the real threat.
The president has said that repeatedly. And before I came into my present position as an academic and a scholar, I have made the argument that perhaps there are people in Pakistan who estimate the Indian threat to Pakistan in more than what it is. But that said, as long as India has several thousand tanks which can't go across the Himalayas to China and can't go towards the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea, Pakistan has to be vigilant. And that is the reason why I say that we are willing to consider an arrangement with India whereby we can remove troops. But as far as Mr. Kilcullen is concerned, his approach to counterinsurgency essentially is that the Pakistani army should stop thinking about conventional warfare and simply become a counterinsurgency army. And no country in the world is a totally counterinsurgency army, including the British or the American military.
No, but if you're serious about telling me that we don't regard India as the number one threat now, it's our own internal problem, our counterinsurgency effort that is our number one commitment, then surely it is time to sort out the ISA, Pakistani intelligence, which the Americans still say cannot be trusted because for too long it has had too many ties to the Islamist militants, who you now tell me are the fundamental existential threat.
The